For me, ideally, I'd like a lot of diversity. That's the one thing that I'm just not happy about being down here in Virginia in general, and particularly in Chesterfield. And growing up in Connecticut, like I truly knew what it meant for there to be diversity. I mean, there were kids from Laos and kids that were from the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rican. I mean, it wasn't just the Spanish Mexican kids and the Asian kids. Like I knew what it meant, and what the shape of people's eyes and the inflection in the voice, just everything. So for down here, for everything to be black, white, and Mexican, it just aggravates me, and I just don't think that our kids are really getting the full exposure to what the world looks like, in general.
I think growing up with people who are different than you is really important. If you, as a child, grow up with everyone who's the same, who have the same belief systems, which we all tend to group ourselves together, you don't ever learn to see that other side of the
different perspective.
A different perspective. And living in someone else's shoes is really important as you move on in life.
If you grow up amidst a diverse community, you have more of an appreciation for your own uniqueness. And that really builds your own self-esteem, your own character, and that sort of thing. And so to not have that can be an impairment almost.
That's a really good point.
I think diversity is pretty important to us. I grew up in a very white area. It was there was a fair bit of socioeconomic diversity, but there was not a whole lot of diversity in terms of race, religion, and so that's something that is very appealing to me. I got a taste of that once I went to college and got to really experience what that does in terms of broadening your horizons and exposing you to different people and different viewpoints, and I found that to be very helpful and sort of helped me grow as a person.
We live in the 21st century. We know that students today have to be able to communicate strategically and well, and they are going to be working in job environments that are not the same as when they grew up or what they're accustomed to or familiar to. They have to be able to relate to other cultures and other backgrounds. So that way there is some trust that is built. And then you have a cohesiveness and a synergy in a workplace to be able to excel as the workplace. So for our children, I want them to be, understanding of the fact that they're, that the color of their skin is not the only color of the skin that they will see, and that they have to be able to work with people from all backgrounds and all races and treat them the same way as they would treat their friends or their family members. There's no different. The color of your skin, to me, that doesn't mean anything. I mean, we're people first. So I want my kids to understand that, so from the diversity's perspective, that's me.
Growing up, I didn't go to a very diverse school. I was different from everyone else, and I felt that. And I'm hoping that my children go to a more heterogeneous school, but it also means to me socioeconomic status, so not just race, but religion, wealth. All of those things are really important to me when it comes to quote-unquote diversity.
I think that this is similar to probably David's idea that as I continued to move forward in my life and in my schools, I found that learning more about other people and other religions, and certainly as a world history teacher as well, it just makes life so much more rich and exciting and wonderful to have that experience with different people. And I think that starting that at an early age can only be beneficial with children. I think that's one reason why both of us would prefer not to go the private school route for Sasha and Bryce, because we want to have them not only meet children of different ethnicities, but also of different income levels. I think that's important too. I don't want them to think that there's only one set group or one way of doing things in Richmond and in the state and in the world.
But my job as their mom and as their father is to prepare them for the world and to make sure that they have as much experience to pull on. So when they're faced with some type of challenge, they're ready. They know they have the resources and or the abilities to be able to accomplish it. That's our duty. We have to make that happen for them.
The value that these parents place on diverse educational experiences is backed by more than 50 years of social science evidence. We know that diverse schools are linked to many benefits for children. For students of all races, these benefits include exposure to different cultural knowledge and understanding, the ability to adopt multiple perspectives or to put themselves in others' shoes, which enhances critical thinking skills, reduction in students' willingness to accept stereotypes, more cross-racial friendships, along with invaluable experience that helps all students learn to live and work across lines of difference, perpetuation effects, so that students who are products of integrated schools seek out integrated experiences later in life. As our society grows more diverse, white students are positively impacted by each of these outcomes. Minority students experience other benefits that flow from desegregated settings. These include higher academic achievement, access to advantages of social networks that pass along informal information about college and job opportunities, loftier educational and career expectations, increased high school graduation and college-going rates, higher earnings, and improved health outcomes later in life. We also know that schools of concentrated poverty and minority-segregated schools often confront significantly lower graduation rates, fewer highly qualified teachers, and higher rates of teacher and staff turnover, diminished access to challenging curricula like AP courses, inadequate facilities and material resources, and lower levels of parental and community involvement. Until the early 1950s, Richmond abided by the Virginia constitutional mandate that prohibited white and colored children from attending the same school. A series of court cases leading up to the Brown v. Board of Education decision in 1954 had shown that children of color attended schools that were very different than the schools of white children. Despite official claims of separate but equal, children of color attended schools with outdated or no textbooks, underpaid teachers, and poor facilities, among other disparities. In Richmond, the Brown decision was met by public opposition and a strategy of resistance. Many white families chose to leave Richmond City for the surrounding counties and their predominantly white schools. That trend exacerbated a much longer-standing pattern of white flight to the suburbs fueled by development patterns and subsidized by post-World War II federal mortgage assistance and the construction of the interstate highway system. Other families remained in Richmond and enrolled their children in all-white independent schools with the help of tuition grants taken from public funds. Prolonged passive resistance forestalled the possibility of racially integrated schools in Richmond. In 1954, the public school population in Richmond was 43% black, but by 1971, black enrollment had soared to 70%. The first real step to implement Brown in the Richmond area was the 1970 decision by federal court judge Robert H. Marriage, who ordered the Richmond School Board to develop a plan for busing. He also suggested to the Richmond School Board that they meet with Chesterfield and Henrico school officials to discuss the consolidation of the 3 school districts. Surprising to many, the Richmond School Board requested the court to order consolidation, citing numerous economic and social interdependencies between the 3 jurisdictions. Judge Marriage approved the plan, and in January 1972, he ordered consolidation. By this time, the Richmond public schools were 70% black, while the surrounding county schools were 90% white. While most white parents in Henrico and Chesterfield did not support consolidation, a survey reported that 87% planned to comply with consolidation and stay in their school districts as long as the quality of education was not diminished. After an appeal to the Fourth Circuit Court that overturned Judge Marriage's ruling, a 1973 appeal to the Supreme Court resulted in a tie, reaffirming the lower court's ruling. Given the demographic makeup of the metro area's urban and suburban school system, Brown offered few opportunities for meaningful desegregation, since Richmond City was well on its way to becoming a predominantly minority system. In the past 20 years, demographic changes in the city and suburbs have resulted in a situation where promoting the kinds of desirable environments the parents in this video discuss within certain area school districts is more feasible, even though efforts to foster racial diversity across district lines remains imperative. This is because unless we act urgently to harness the benefits of diversity, we risk playing out the white flight of the past on a much larger geographic scale. Such a scenario would have tremendously negative social, moral, economic, and environmental consequences for our region. The following maps highlight some of the racial transition that has taken place since 1990. The first series of maps illustrates the spatial distribution of the Black population in Richmond, Henrico, and Chesterfield. Based on data from the U.S. Census, areas shaded the darkest blue represent intensely segregated neighborhoods, where Black residents constitute 90 to 100% of the population. You can see that in 1990, the majority of such neighborhoods were concentrated within the city limits, even as a growing African American presence in the surrounding counties was evident. 10 years later, in 2000, the proportion of Black residents in Henrico and Chesterfield had increased significantly. It was also becoming clear that although African American families were gaining access to suburban neighborhoods, they were being concentrated in certain parts of the counties. Often, as was the case in central Henrico, those segregated neighborhoods were just across the city-suburban boundary line. Fast forward another 10 years to 2010, and that same trend is even more apparent. A significant deconcentration of Black residents in Richmond City has occurred, even as neighborhoods across Chesterfield and Henrico became increasingly segregated. Meanwhile, the city of Richmond's population increased for the first time since 1970, largely fueled by a growth in white residents. The map related to residential patterns shows how white residents were distributed along the larger region, to include the exurban counties of Amelia, Powhatan, Goochland, Louisa, Hanover, and New Kent. A 2011 report from the Brookings Institution indicated that, with the exception of Hanover, all of those jurisdictions were among the top 20 fastest-growing exurbs in the nation in terms of the share of white residents. In other words, as the metro's inner suburbs of Henrico and Chesterfield have become more diverse, the outer ring has rapidly grown whiter. The second set of maps shows how racial change in the metro area has impacted schools. The first map shows a number of pie charts that represent the racial makeup of Richmond area elementary schools in 1992. Red indicates the share of white students in a school. Green represents the share of Black students. Yellow, the share of Latino students, and purple, the share of Asian students. Federal enrollment data shows that the overarching pattern for schools in the early 1990s is closely related to what we saw on the residential maps. Black students are intensely segregated in Richmond City schools, even as certain schools in the surrounding counties are displaying some signs of racial diversity. In 2000, a similar pattern is prevalent. More elementary schools in the county were reporting significant Black enrollments. However, another subset of schools, mostly in South Richmond and parts of Chesterfield, enrolled small shares of Latino students. By 2008, more dramatic changes were in evidence. The number of racially isolated elementary schools in both Henrico and Chesterfield had increased dramatically, particularly in parts of central Henrico County. The number of elementary schools with significant shares of Latino students had also increased, and importantly, these were schools that tended to have large numbers of Black students. The growing isolation of two historically disadvantaged populations bears close attention. The final school-related map illustrates the manner in which racial segregation often overlaps with economic segregation. Each of the pie charts represents a Richmond area elementary school in 2008, with the darker green color showing the share of students qualifying for free or reduced price lunch, and with the lighter green indicating students who did not qualify. Even though Richmond City elementary schools were the most likely to report very high concentrations of student poverty, many schools in the surrounding inner ring suburban systems also educated large numbers of students in poverty. These contemporary trends in school and residential segregation are the direct result of our failure to cooperate on a more regional scale in the past. Any number of possibilities could begin to reverse this situation. Many of the Richmond area's peer regions have worked to promote diverse learning environments. The efforts of these places that are similar in size and demographic makeup should serve as a guide for our region as we move into the 21st century. Omaha, Nebraska, nestled in the heartland of the United States, is home to one of the largest inter-district open enrollment programs in the country. The Omaha Regional Agreement was created by the Nebraska legislature to address district segregation. In an effort to create diversity, 11 districts in the Omaha region work together as a learning community to support the commitment to a socioeconomic-based desegregation strategy. All 11 districts are also part of a consolidated metropolitan revenue-sharing tax base agreement across the region. The Inter-District Open Enrollment Plan, overseen by a regional governing council, strives to increase the socioeconomic diversity of enrollment in each school and grade level to reflect that of the entire region. Students can apply to a magnet school based on their attendance area where they are selected through a lottery. Transportation is provided for students within their attendance zones, and for those who transfer to a school more than 1 mile away and contribute to the socioeconomic diversity of the school. Hartford, Connecticut, along with a number of other major metro areas in the state, operates a system of regional magnet programs. These theme-based schools of choice are located near urban-suburban boundaries and are designed to attract a diverse student enrollment across district lines. Offerings include a Montessori regional magnet, an Academy of Public Safety, complete with its own fire truck, a regional arts magnet, and Regio Magnet. Connecticut's regional magnet programs originated from a 1996 state Supreme Court ruling. Today, the popular and oversubscribed inter-district magnet schools are working to meet the demand of at least 80% of yearly applicants. The ultimate goal of the plan is to provide all interested students with the opportunity to attend integrated educational setting. Research on the Connecticut magnet programs finds improved academic and social outcomes for students of all races. Connecticut is developing additional regional magnet programs in several cities and suburbs across the state that could be one path to a better, less segregated future. In Louisville, Kentucky, the Jefferson County Public Schools resulted from a 1975 merger of the predominantly black Louisville schools and the predominantly white Jefferson County Public Schools, JCPS. JCPS employs a number of approaches to provide racially balanced schools. Each census block in the district is defined as a category, 1, 2, or 3, by combining median household income, the percentage of non-white population, and the average adult educational attainment in the block group. The assignment policy strives to ensure that each school in the district has a diverse mix of these different types of neighborhoods. The maximum distance that any student must travel within these clusters is 17 miles. At the elementary, middle, and high school levels, students may apply to the school that serves their address, to magnet schools, or to optional schools. The magnet schools supplement the broader assignment policy and offer a wide variety of options, including International Baccalaureate, Performing Arts, Math, Science, Technology elementary and middle schools. The current condition of education in the Richmond area is the product of numerous past legal and policy choices. A different set of choices could begin to turn us in a new direction. It is time to think about what those different decisions should look like.
It's not just what you learn in the book, it's what you experience.
Right.
So for Utopia, for me, is really bringing about that full experience, like bringing what happens in the books to life. And that's why I like Choice, because it creates an environment where people are pushing themselves out of the norm.
That's right.
And making sure that there's true learning that's happening.
Right.
The purpose of this short video is to begin a critical conversation about how we might begin to foster greater cooperation across our region as we seek to provide all students with high-quality, diverse learning opportunities that will prepare them for the 21st century. Each one of the models presented, the innovative 11-district regional agreement in Omaha, the regional magnet schools in Connecticut, or the city suburban student assignment plan that creates diverse schools by considering the neighborhoods children come from in Louisville, could offer a way forward for the Richmond metro area. Importantly, in our regional governor schools, we already have an example in which working together across school districts is a guiding principle. We must begin to build more of those opportunities. If we do not act, if we let another 40 years go by before revisiting some of the most fundamental downfalls of our society, the segregation of our schools and neighborhoods, then we will be putting the economic, social, and democratic health of our region at great risk.
First, I think we all need to get on one page. Everybody is not on one page when it comes to education. You know, you have some people talking about this, some people talking about this. No, it all should be one thing. It shouldn't be a city school and a Henrico school. We should be able to go to any school that we feel that our child wants to go to or that needs to. I don't feel that because I live in a city, I can't go to a Henrico school. I don't think I don't like that. I think that we should be able to pick the schools, and I also think that all the schools should be on one accord, straight across. The same, right?
It's weird. It's like city schools are predominantly African American, county schools are predominantly white. So it's kind of like halfway, I should say, because there are some African Americans in the county school and there are some Caucasian students in an urban city school. But as far as them like merging together as one big school, I don't think that has happened yet.
Do you have any thoughts on why that hasn't happened?
Because of what the media says, like they also, like I said, the fights and stuff like that. They don't really talk about like the basketball team, like if your son or daughter plays sports, or if they're into music or playing an instrument. Like I said, the science department, like anything like that. They don't look at the school for that. They just see the outside. They never see the forest for the trees. If you can understand that.
You know, we're all in this together. It's not, all right, this is just the city's problem and I don't live in the city. You know, I may work in the city, but I live way out somewhere else, so I don't have to care too much about it. I think if we could adopt more of a, you know, all of this is part of Richmond, and we can find a way to develop more of that sense of community, that might help. But that's how you do that. That's a tough question to answer.
One week in every February is officially designated as National Brotherhood Week. This means that we're supposed to stop whatever we're doing, burning, killing, whatever, and love everybody else. And it's really quite a strain. Here's a song about National Brotherhood Week. Oh, the poor folks hate the rich folks, and the rich folks hate the poor folks. To hate all but the right folks is an old established rule, but during National Brotherhood Week, National Brotherhood Week, see Cassius Clay and Mrs. Wallace dancing cheek to cheek. It's fun to eulogize the people you despise, as long as you don't let them in your school. Oh, the poor folks hate the rich folks, and the rich folks hate the poor folks. All of my folks hate all of your folks. It's American as apple pie. But during National Brotherhood Week, National Brotherhood Week, New Yorkers love the Puerto Ricans 'cause it's very chic. Step up and shake the hand of someone you can't stand. You can tolerate him if you try.